This isn't totally unexpected. We plan for cases like this, and the team's working to make sure we're in a good configuration and complete our mission. Earlier, before we got closer to integrated ops, we did have the engineering teams note that we've got over 90 hours of available free flight time in that helium system, and that will be 90 hours after undock.
Gary, yeah, just that.
And as we've been nearing station, Starliner has been using its Vesta camera system. As we were around 100 kilometers away from station, Starliner picked up ISS on its cameras, a small dot in the distance. We've been using that narrow field camera on Vesta, the vision-based electro-optical star tracking assembly, to measure the distance between Starliner and ISS and use that to help give Starliner a better estimation of where it is and where it needs to go for our planned docking around 11:15 a.m. Central.
We're standing by now again for the NSRPC burn. It's coming up in about 10 seconds. Again, this is an automated burn. The capsule is flying itself right now. This comes after the NHPC 1 and 2 burns occurring on time and nominally just previous to this. Confirmation the burn has begun, and we have 4 good OMAC thrusters firing.
And we've got cut off.
Starliner, good burn, and go to configure for space to space and try a comm check with ISS on the big loop.
Again, we had confirmation of a good NSRPC burn with those OMAC thrusters. That's orbital maneuvering and control. The next will be a go, no go for the TPI burn.
Loud and clear. We have you so loud and clear. We're ready for you. Come aboard.
Hey, can you guys see us yet?
We're about to go look out the windows right now, although they're telling us to close them soon.
Try to get a good picture of us quickly. We can't wait to be there. Great to hear your voice, Kojo.
Sonny, Butch, so good to hear you. Can you see us?
We haven't looked out the window yet. We're about to. We do appreciate that permission to come aboard. Thank you.
I'm flashing me all this light signals, Butch.
We'll be looking.
And Starliner Houston on the big loop. Copy, good. Comm checks with station. How many?
Have you the same, loud and clear?
Yeah, loud and clear as well down here.
Neil, we can hear your voice as well. Great big loop comm check. A little bit non-standard, but we wanted to hear our friend. Just amazing. Thanks.
Yeah, same here. Super excited.
Starliner MCCH on the big loop. How do you hear?
CCH, Starliner, we have you. Lima Charlotte. How many?
I have you loud and clear as well. Station Houston on the big loop. Since big loop is now set up on 2, we're going to move station calls over to 3.
Station copies.
As you just heard, some conversations between all of the players in today's...
Tally? Oh.
Houston copies, Talio.
Station copies the tally. We're still looking.
Looks so little from here.
Give us a flash, just a signal on the window. We'll try to find you.
I think we're a little below you. Your solar arrays are goalposts right now for us.
Again, with those big loops configured, that means the space station, Starliner, and both flight control rooms can all speak with each other as we get into proximity operations.
Station visual.
You saw my signal.
Butch Wilmore has confirmed he can see the International Space Station from Starliner, again traveling about 13 kilometers away from the space station at this time and scheduled to dock at approximately 11:15 a.m. Central Time.
Right on to you. Okay, I'll put that in work shortly. I'm going to grab my iPad and get it in work. Was that 1268? Dyslexia 1286. Thank you.
Now with the big loop configured and we are getting into those integrated operations, it's not just the Starliner mission control room here who is tentatively watching the arrival to the International Space Station today, but the International Space Station team is as well. So I'm going to toss it over to my colleague Gary Jordan just across the hall.
Expected for the timeline and the timeline tool, roll pitch yaw 179, 173, and 4.
Of Butch and Suni to the International Space Station. Now, here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the International Space Station operations. We're now in integrated operations with the teams down the hall in the White Flight Control Room. Here in Mission Control Houston, the team is led by Flight Director Vincent LaCourte. Sitting next to him is Diana Trujillo. And over the Capcom voice that you'll hear today from the room is Will Vu. Now coming into frame, Vincent LaCourte, the flight director that's leading the teams here today for rendezvous and docking. With integrated operations, you've heard some of the setup that's needed in order to enable that. That includes the enabling of the big loop. So now all teams, including the 2 flight control rooms here in Houston, as well as the 2 vehicles in space, the Starliner and the International Space Station, now all talking on one big loop. The teams have both go for integrated operations, and now in the next 5 minutes, the teams here in International Space Station Flight Control Room will pull a go, no-go for the TPI burn. This is a burn that brings us into the approach ellipsoid. Once we're in the approach ellipsoid, it'll be a carefully choreographed series of maneuvers to get Starliner to the very forward port of the International Space Station. Space Station is in an attitude configuration ready to receive the Starliner. The solar alpha rotary joints that control the solar arrays of the International Space Station are locked and feathered. They're in a position ready for the rendezvous operations. Here in Mission Control Houston, International Space Station teams are polling again go for that TPI burn. We're in integrated operations monitoring things, and from the station side, everything's looking good. With that, we'll continue to follow along with the teams over in the White Flight Control Room looking after Starliner and its systems. Leah and Jim, back over to you.
Thanks, Gary. And we will continue checking in with Gary and the team in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Again, we are just across the hall.
Butch is a little fragmented. You got a chip in the B chip slot, and it won't record.
Affirmative. Memory chip, and it will not record. I'm trying to do it through the laptop. It's just on the camera itself.
Okay, we'll have to check.
D at Kennedy said, told her that it had to be in D. So for some reason the camera's not seeing it.
Okay, copy.
In the center of your screen here, up to the right in a light blue shirt, that is Flight Director for Starliner today, Ed Van Cise. And to his right is the bottom of the screen is the Capcom, Neil Nagata. Neil is the voice you'll hear speaking with the astronauts aboard Starliner. He funnels all the information coming from the flight controllers and teams here on the ground and shares that with the crew members. That way they're getting a single point of information as they continue through today's operations. We're coming up on a go, no-go poll for the TPI burn. That's the terminal phase initiation burn. We will leave the co-elliptic burn that we have been keeping since the NSRPC just a little bit before, just about 10 minutes ago, really. We will conduct this TPI burn, which will also bring us inside the approach ellipsoid. The approach ellipsoid is a 4 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer invisible boundary around the International Space Station. It's the first of 2 that we will see today. This helps teams monitor the arrival and departure of visiting vehicles, whether they're carrying crew or cargo.
These 2 regions around the space station have an analogy on the ground. The approach ellipsoid is pretty similar to regional air control that you might see around a city, and the keep out sphere, which is the closer region around ISS, is a lot like the airspace around an airport that you have to get permission to fly into before landing, just like we do for a docking with space station.
A good Starliner camera picture. Lines up.
Roger.
We heard configuration from the crews aboard the space station and Starliner that they can visually see each other, but Starliner systems, the VESTA system specifically, which stands for Vision-Based Electro-Optical Sensor Tracking Assembly, that also is tracking the space station as well. These are technically like the eyes of the spacecraft and will continue following the outline of the space station until it can hone in on the docking port. Today, Starliner is docking to the Node 2 forward port, which is where one of the international docking adapters is located. Again, we are tracking docking at about 11:15 a.m.
On a big loop for the centerline camera.
Go ahead.
Hey, Butch, the config we think we have is there's no card in slot A, card in slot B. I'd like you to pop the card out of slot B, take a look and see if there's like a write protect switch. It looks like a little lock on the SD card, and see if that's in the lock position. And if it is, you can toggle that back, put it in slot B. If it's unlocked, we can go ahead and try slot A.
We'll give it a shot. Thanks.
Starliner Houston on the big loop. Your signal is Charlie. You're a go to command the AEATP.
AATP, here we go. EATP is enabled.
We see the same.
Butch Wilmore entering the AEATP into Starliner's flight control system. That stands for Approach Ellipsoid Authority to Proceed. That will allow Starliner's automated flight system to approach into ISS approach ellipsoid after agreement from both the ISS flight control team and the Starliner flight control team.
Starliner Houston big loop. We just wanted to let you know that when we're manipulating that memory card, we'll make sure the centerline camera is off. OFF.
Yeah, it's off. We're doing that.
Roger.
Starliner will not go into the approach ellipsoid until after the TPI.
Protect switch to the other setting, and when she put it back in the camera and then turned the camera on, it still is asking for A. Is there a way to make it ask for B? Are you aware?
Yeah, no. We can go ahead and just try A.
A little bit of troubleshooting on Starliner's centerline camera. The centerline camera is a secondary source of visual information that the crew uses. It's a camera mounted in the center of the forward docking port on Starliner. It feeds video data directly to the crew's procedure tablets. They also are recording some of the video for that as part of the flight tests for this mission. That camera will be used more as the crew gets a little bit closer to station. And they're doing this troubleshooting as we are nearing the TPI or terminal phase initiation burn, and that is planned to come up here in about 6 minutes.
We've heard multiple voices and seen some of our team members in the room here today, but to tell you a little bit more about our NASA astronauts aboard Starliner. Again, this is the first flight of astronauts aboard this spacecraft. We're talking about Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, the commander and pilot, respectively, of Starliner.
Roger that.
Commander Butch Wilmore was raised in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and is married to Deanna Wilmore, and they have 2 daughters. He has a Master of Science in Aviation Systems from the University of Tennessee. The U.S. Navy captain successfully completed 21 combat missions during Operation Desert Storm while operating from the flight deck of the USS Kennedy. Butch has accumulated more than 8,000 flight hours and 663 carrier landings. NASA selected him as an astronaut in July of 2000. So far, he's completed 2 space flights. This is his 3rd. His first was a pilot on the Space Shuttle Atlantis in 2009, and in 2014, he served as a flight engineer for Expedition 41 to the International Space Station. To date, Wilmore has logged 178 days in space, and I think we can chalk that up now to 179, including 4 spacewalks. This will be his 3rd mission to the International Space Station. Before his selection to NASA, Wilmore was on exchange to the United States Air Force as a flight test instructor at the Air Force Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base in California.
And Suni Williams, the Boeing CFT pilot, was selected to be an astronaut by NASA in 1998. Like Wilmore, now this will be Suni's 3rd mission to the International Space Station. In her previous 2 flights, she served as a flight engineer for Expedition 14, and in 2012 as a member of the Expedition 32 crew. She's logged 382 days in space, including 7 spacewalks. Williams has more than 50 cumulative hours of spacewalk time, and that's the 2nd most by a female astronaut. The retired U.S. Navy captain is a former naval test pilot and instructor. She's logged more than 3,000 flight hours and more than 30 different aircraft. Suni has a Master's of Science degree in Engineering Management from the Florida Institute of Technology. Williams, who grew up in Needham, Massachusetts, is married to Michael Williams. She enjoys hanging out with their dogs, working out, hiking, camping, as well as working on cars and houses.
And the crew woke up this morning at about 3 a.m. Central Time, just about their scheduled time after about 8 hours of rest overnight. Once they get to the International Space Station, they'll be joining 7 crew members living and working there. Currently living aboard the International Space Station are NASA's Mike Barrett, Matt Dominic, Tracy Dyson, and Jeanette Epps, plus Roscosmos cosmonauts Alexander Gurbenkin, Nikolai Chub, and Oleg Kononenko. That's the Expedition 71 crew. So once Butch and Suni arrive today, we'll be up to 9 crew members aboard the International Space Station.
Starliner Houston on a big loop, be advised that's for both. No action, RCS jet S2A2 fail, still go for the burn.
No action. You know what type of fail?
It failed off, Butch, and right when that was happening, I was calling up, just be advised, neither of the infrareds are taking measurements now for RELNAV, so we're going to go ahead and reboot the camera IR1. Backup enable 2 for this jet fail.
Enable 1 off, enable 2 on.
We are about 30 seconds now until the terminal phase initiation burn. Again, after completion of this burn, Starliner will move into the approach ellipsoid.
And the burn has started.
Starliner, good TPI.
Good TPI.
And Commander Butch, Wilmore, and the flight control team here noting a good TPI burn. Just before that burn, there was a call out about a RCS jet fail. The meaning behind that message is that we have been monitoring the thruster, and while it had good performance, part of our kind of conservative set of sensor data around the health and status of that thruster, something was slightly out of the planned ranges for that, and so as a safety precaution, we turned that off. But during our last check, it was performing as intended. Starliner has multiple redundant sets of thrusters. As a precaution, we've turned that one off. There are procedures to turn it back on and do a checkout when we're not close to a burn coming up.
Starliner is approximately 700 kilometers away from the International Space Station. The orbiting laboratory is currently flying about 17,000 miles per hour, 260 statute miles over Iran. We've walked through a handful of burns this morning. The first of those, the NHPC-1 burn at 7:52 a.m. changing the height of Starliner, and the second of those, the NHPC-2 at 8:14 a.m., also fine-tuning its approach to the International Space Station. We saw the NSRPC burn at 8:38 a.m. Central Time. This made the the Starliner spacecraft co-elliptic with the International Space Station, and the terminal phase initiation burn was just conducted right on time at 9:02 a.m. Central Time. This will move Starliner into the approach ellipsoid. That's the 4 kilometer by 2 by 2 kilometer invisible sphere around the space station that helps us monitor arriving and departing spacecraft. All of the burns this morning have been according to plan. Again, Starliner is currently flying autonomously, so flying on its own. We will see, however, Butch and Suni have the opportunity to take control of the spacecraft and conduct another manual piloting demo once we're about 260 meters away from the International Space Station. This is a test flight, so we want to give the crew an opportunity to see how the spacecraft flies, should they ever need to take control of it. Once that manual piloting demo is complete, they will transition back over to autonomous power. The spacecraft will then continue its approach to the International Space Station all on its own. And again, we're targeting docking at approximately 11:15 a.m. Central.
We're coming up on the
Houston, on the big loop. Hey, we just started picking up RELNAV measurements on both IR cameras. That's when it went to silhouette track at 7,000 meters. Prior to that, in long range track, we were not getting any measurements. We don't understand why we weren't getting measurements, but it's good that we are now getting measurements. But since we have that behavior, we had the conversation here on the ground that, of course, as you know, if once we get into eclipse here, if we go RELNAV degraded, then diverge, the spacecraft will drop down to manual, and you're going to have to take us up to 200 meters per 11.11.301. And we expect to have good comm through that time period, and we'll give you updates should we see any other behavior or bad behavior.
We copy all. Right now we got vessel 1 and 2 degraded, but we're still converged.
Yeah, okay, copy that, and RELNAV is good.
A good rail now.
And Starliner, those Vesta degraded signatures, health and status thing out of the Vesta due to some VEX faults earlier. And RNAV is still converged.
Houston Station on 612, the Yedave, backup Yedave swap is complete. And I guess that means that the compressor hose is disconnected. We'll go to initiate transfer. My bad. Sorry about that. Copy.
And as Starliner is approaching station, getting closer to its IF-1 or inbound fly around 1 maneuver coming up in about 35 minutes, you've heard some back and forth between Commander Butch Wilmore and Capcom Neil Agata. Starliner's Vesta system is currently tracking both the position of ISS, but now that we're close enough, you're seeing some of the outline of ISS.
Roger that.
The Vesta system has a series of cameras, some in the visual spectrum, some in infrared. This will allow Starliner to help track ISS both in the Vesta system will help track ISS both in darkness and light. The red circles showing up on the Vesta display are the Vesta system picking out features on the ISS. When Vesta can pick out specific features of ISS via image recognition, that information can let Starliner know which direction Starliner needs to align with, which will pick Starliner's orientation to be in the optimal position to keep tracking ISS, and we'll follow that all the way into the docking port.
Currently show all of our crossing about 1,800 meters.
Ray agrees.
That view on your screen, coming from the Vesta system aboard Starliner, now checking out the International Space Station. You can see it coming into view pretty well. And of course, we are monitoring Starliner's journey here in the White Flight Control Room at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. But over across the hall in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, NASA's Gary Jordan is continuing to monitor the station side of today's operations. Gary, can you tell us how things are going?
Hey, Leah, things are going very well. We're following along every step of the way with you down the hall in the White Flight Control Room here in what's called Ficker 1, or the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Teams here led by Flight Director Vince LaCourte, watching over the crew aboard Starliner, as well as the Expedition 71 crew that's aboard the International Space Station. Crew members split up doing different things. It's Matt Dominic that you see there on the graphic on the front right there, NASA astronaut who's responsible for enabling the monitoring tools necessary to watch Butch and Suni approach the International Space Station. There are tools, there is software that is receiving data from the Common Communications for Visiting Vehicle, or CV2V2 system, that creates a link between the International Space Station and Starliner. It's Matt Dominic there you see in the front that's going to be following along with that. Later, we'll have Matt Dominic as well as Tracy Dyson in the back left there. She's a NASA astronaut, flew up with the Soyuz crew, including Chub and Kononenko, Nikolai Chub and Oleg Kononenko. Kononenko, of course, who just passed the milestone of 1,000 days cumulative in space. On the left there, you see Alexander Gubyankin, who is the cosmonaut that joins the Crew 7 crew in the very front of this graphic. To the right in this graphic is Mike Barrett, and on the far right, Jeanette Epps, making up the complement of 7 astronauts and cosmonauts of Expedition 71. It'll be Tracy Dyson and Matt Dominic that oversee the final moments of the Rendezvous operations through the docking of Starliner to the very forward port. Once they do dock, the International Space Station flight control teams here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room will work with the teams down the hall in Starliner Flight Control to walk through the hatch opening sequence and operations. The 7-member crew that we just talked about will be there in the Node 2 forward hatch, ready to welcome Butch and Suni, the first crew members to fly Starliner to the International Space Station, and we'll conduct a welcome ceremony from there. Here in the Flight Control Room, we talked about Vince LaCourte, the flight director. Next to him is the Capcom, Will Vu. You'll hear his voice relayed up to the crew aboard the International Space Station. Right now, all crew members are talking aboard are talking in the Space Ground 2 loop, which is a big loop. Everybody here that you're in the flight control rooms, both rooms here in Houston, the Space Station Flight Control Room and Starliner Flight Control Room, are talking with the 2 spacecraft that are about to rendezvous here coming up in the next couple of hours. Will Vu there is responsible as the voice from the control rooms here to talk with the crew aboard the International Space Station. Most of the communications you'll hear from him will be relaying to Matt Dominic, who again will be overseeing the rendezvous operations. Neil Nagata on the left there will be responsible for talking with Butch and Suni in Starliner. Everything is coordinated as part of the integrated operations, very carefully choreographed procedures that you'll hear to make sure everybody's talking and the rendezvous operations are going swimmingly. So again, everything in the International Space Station Flight Control Room is going according to plan. We're tracking down to some of the next burns here, the inbound fly-arounds, which, of course, as after the TPI burn, terminal phase initiation, we get inside the approach ellipsoid. Once we're inside the approach ellipsoid, we operate by these joint flight rules and count down towards these next sequence of burns to get ever closer. It'll be very interesting to see some of the great visuals for some of the free flight demos that are necessary to verify all of the different capabilities of Starliner as part of this flight test. Again, station is ready to receive the Starliner. We're tracking no issues at this time. Attitude and solar configurations aboard this station is ready, and so really we're just following along every step of the way with the teams over there in the Starliner Mission Control Room. So that'll be it for us for now. We're continuing to follow along, and we'll be with you every step of the way. Leah and Jim, back to you over in the White Flight Control Room.
Thanks, Gary. And yes, we continue to monitor the arrival of Starliner to the International Space Station. And if you're just joining us, a reminder, this is the very first flight of Starliner with crew members aboard. So we'll be bringing the space station total number of crew members up to 9 upon their arrival today, again, targeting approximately 11:15 a.m. Central Time. And as we get closer and closer, the Vesta system aboard Starliner, which is the view you're seeing right now, will continue to give us an even more defined look at the International Space Station. It's getting even easier to make out those individual solar arrays at this time. And as we get even closer, we'll stop tracking in silhouette mode and begin tracking the docking port itself. Again, we're going to the forward docking port today. It's the Node 2 forward port, where one of the two international docking adapters is located. Take a look at the rendezvous and docking profile today. We've had two height adjustment and plane change burns already. Those are the NHPC 1 and 2 burns occurring at 7:52 a.m. and 8:14 a.m. Central, respectively. Those were both good burns. We then came up on the NSRPC burn. This was a co-elliptic and plane change burn at 8:38 a.m. Central, another good burn, before moving to the terminal phase initiation burn. This will bring Starliner inside the approach ellipsoid, that invisible boundary that we monitor outside the International Space Station. And we are coming up next on the inbound fly around 1.
The inbound fly around 1 maneuver will swing Starliner out in front of ISS in the direction that ISS is flying in orbit. Then the IF2, or the inbound fly around 2 maneuver, will slightly alter Starliner's trajectory to hit a peak altitude in front of the Node 2 forward docking port. From there, Starliner...
Big loop for tablets. We can take another reseat on the tablet that's charging, and we're also curious on the battery status of the tablet you're using for centerline camera.
My camera, 80%, it says 2 hours left. When it's on the chargers, it's 71.
Did you say the centerline camera tablet's currently on the charger?
Watching it right now, the centerline camera is now going on the charger. The other tablet which I have in front of me says gold, it's 71.
Copy that. And can you tell what the centerline camera battery state of charge is?
I got to get out of my seat to look at the centerline camera, so let's just wait till we get radar acquisition.
Starliner, expect radar acquisition in about 400 meters.
Plus fully charged at 190 minutes.
Okay, copy that.
Showing R-bar cross about 1200.
We agree?
some of the communication going between Capcom and Commander Butch Wilmore and pilot Suni Williams is about making sure that the battery of the centerline camera and the batteries on the crew tablets are topped up. Part of the use of those two things is when we begin our just after the inbound fly-around maneuver, we will start to approach ISS. We'll start in the corridor approach, where then the crew will do one of their manual piloting demos, where they will do a hold at around the 250-meter mark out in front of station in the approach corridor. After about 5 minutes of that test demonstration, Starliner will then go back to automated mode. We'll hold around the 200-meter mark out in front of station, and then they will get approval to go inside of the keep-out sphere. From there, Starliner will make a slow approach, very fine control, down to about the 10-meter mark out in front of the Node 2 forward docking port. From there, Starliner will activate its NDS or NASA docking system. They'll change the flight control rules to an even finer, small, discrete set of thruster settings. And then we'll go in for a final dock at around 11:15 a.m. Central.
Starliner, good LADAR acquisition.
Good LADAR.
Starliner is now picking up ISS on its LADAR sensors. This is giving Starliner a good 3D picture of ISS in the distance. I gave a brief overview of the burns that are coming up, but let's take a closer look at the full docking profile for Starliner as it approaches ISS.
At this point in the mission, Starliner is racing towards the International Space Station. The goal? Successful docking. But there's still a long way to go. On this flight test, Starliner will have to prove itself every step of the way. The rendezvous process picks up after about 14 orbits and 21 hours into flight. At that point, the spacecraft is cruising a few hundred kilometers behind and below the station. It's time to start climbing. To do that, Starliner fires its orbital maneuvering and attitude control thrusters, or OMACs, to begin the first height adjustment maneuvers. This first burn, NHPC-1, pushes Starliner slightly in front of, but still below the orbiting laboratory. Then, the next burn, NHPC-2, fires the OMACs for a few seconds. This move puts Starliner within kilometers of station, but now Starliner is back behind it. The final height adjustment, NSRPC, is another short OMAC burn that places the vehicle on a co-elliptic path with the station's orbit. Now, Starliner is just outside the approach ellipsoid, with the Vesta cameras in the nose pointing straight at station. After terminal phase rendezvous initiation, The proximity operations begin with a series of inbound fly-around maneuvers. Now, Starliner is just hundreds of meters away from station. Because the two vehicles are closer together, Starliner will only use its smaller reaction control system, or RCS thrusters, from here until docking. The first inbound fly-around maneuver, IF-1, swings Starliner 550 meters ahead of station and raises it another 300 meters. This maneuver accelerates Starliner to about 17,500 miles per hour, nearly matching the station's velocity. Inbound fly-around 2 raises Starliner further, moving into position 300 meters directly in front of station. Now, it's time for the initial approach. At approximately 250 meters, space station crew will manually command the Starliner to stop. This is just to verify that Starliner will obey that command if they need to issue it in the final docking phases. The approach corridor initiation burn sends Starliner into the keep-out sphere, a 200-meter sphere that nothing is allowed to enter unless it plans to dock to station. Then, when Starliner is 182 meters away from station, it will automatically stop and retreat to 200 meters. Once again, this is just to prove that Starliner will execute a retreat if needed. Starliner will then continue its approach until it gets to within just 10 meters of station. Once more, it will pause and prepare the docking system for mating with the ISS until given the go-ahead for final approach. Finally, after hours of this perfectly choreographed orbital dance, Starliner will perform its final approach initiation maneuver. The vehicle will slowly close the final 10 meters until its docking system makes contact with the Boeing-built International Docking Adapter on the Harmony Module's Node 2. Then, Starliner's docking ring will retract, hooks engage, locking Starliner and station together, signifying a successful docking procedure.
Starliner continuing on its way up to the getting ready for the IF-1 burn.
Can you see the ISS center centerline camera on the tablet?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I can't see it at all on the centerline camera. We've got a good picture on the IR camera, but centerline there's nothing. Played with the auto and the manual gain. I mean, I can see the pedal. I think it's getting some reflection from inside the cabin here, but I cannot see that.
All right, yeah, copy that. And Spanky reminded us that you can take a picture or screenshot on the tablet. And in other news, you are go to command a KOS ATP.
We've taken several screenshots and videos, and KOS ATP, here we go.
All right, copy.
KOS ATP is enabled.
Easy copies.
And as part of the process,
We got sunrise coming in 15 minutes.
Okay, yep. Hey, actually, just look that up. Thank you.
and as we're approaching the IF-1 burn coming up here in 10 minutes, Wilmore got the go-ahead to, or the authority.
I don't know how hard it is for ISS to get their lights on, but it might be a good check to see if it's visible with the lights on, since it's not without.
Yeah, we're checking, Butch.
And we're coming up on around 25 seconds, still expected approach ellipsoid entry.
Again, the approach ellipsoid is a 4 by 2 by 2 kilometer invisible boundary around the outside of the International Space Station. And confirmation, we have entered the approach ellipsoid. As Jim was saying, we also heard the authority to proceed to the keep out sphere.
I can now see there is a speck out there.
Station Houston on the big loop for the ISS cruise awareness. Starliner is inside the approach ellipsoid.
Station copies.
Again,
We're still talking about turning on the lights here on ISS. We haven't turned on any yet.
I get some reflection, looks like on the aft end. Something. I was trying to flashlight out the cupola. I don't know.
Yeah, copy.
as we were saying, we have recently heard the authority to proceed to the keep out sphere. We expect the Starliner spacecraft will enter the keep out sphere around 10:35 a.m. Central Time, so a little less than an hour from now. That keep out sphere is another invisible boundary, this one with a 200-meter radius around the International Space Station. To enter the keep out sphere, we must agree that the spacecraft could, for some reason, lose control of its thrusters and still not enter that boundary for 24 hours.
I'm going to be turning on the CETA lights.
Great.
However, before we enter the keep out sphere, we will do a hold at 260 meters at approximately 10:24 a.m. Central Time for another manual piloting demonstration.
And while Starliner's best infrared camera is able to pick up station, we're currently still in a period of darkness. And you heard Commander Butch Wilmore talking about it being a little difficult to pick up the station on the centerline camera, which is a visual spectrum camera. The ISS team's trying to see if they can get the ISS team to turn some of the ISS lights on to make it a little bit easier to pick up the station in using regular eyesight, but we will be coming up on a period of daylight in about the next 20 minutes or so.
We are now about an hour and a half away from our scheduled docking time this morning, again targeting 11:15 a.m. Central. That comes after launch yesterday at 9:52 a.m. Central.
And Butch, Houston on the big loop, we've got one seat of light coming on, and there'll be 4 more coming on. It might take a little bit to warm up.
I see the first one. I saw it when it came on.
Okay, you saw that in the centerline camera?
Affirmative.
And you know what's coming. We're going to want some centerline camera screenshots of that.
Yep.
We heard some communications between the Capcom and the crew aboard Starliner. They are turning some lights on the International Space Station. This will give the crew a better visual of the station itself as they continue to approach. We are standing by for the IF-1 burn in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. This is the inbound fly-around burn.
This inbound fly-around 1 maneuver is going to be performed with the RCS jets. This burn should last about 18 seconds.
The RCS jets that'll be executing this burn are on the service module portion of the spacecraft. And if you look in the top right corner of your screen, that is what it looks like is facing you, the service module portion. This part does not return to Earth. It is disposed after the deorbit burn nearing the end of the mission. The only portion that will return to Earth is the crew module. That's where Butch and Suni are seated right now. It'll parachute to a landing in the southwestern United States.
And we're coming up on 10 seconds to the IF-1 burn. And thrusters are firing. And thruster cut off.
Good burns, Starliner and Butch. We got all 5. See the lights on for ISS. How does it look?
Yes, we can see it. I cannot make out the width, however, but we can see the station.
Yeah, but can you clearly see like the distance between the 2 outboard lights?
You can see the one that's on the port side. I cannot see the one on the starboard side. It might be blocked by something.
Roger.
And we heard Starliner had a good IF1 burn. With that, we have an expected IF2 burn. Small adjustment to place Starliner to start flying towards the approach corridor for the Node 2 forward docking port. That IF2 burn is coming up in about 18 minutes. Still some issues picking up the lights on ISS.
Starliner had a transient caution around the time of the burn. No action. It was just sort of expected, and there was timing with how the triggers were set up for that message.
Yeah, we copy. We saw.
That IF1 burn coming right on the timeline at 9:47 a.m. Central Time. We are targeting docking with the space station at 11:15 a.m. Central.
And you heard Commander Butch Wilmore talking a little bit about trying to pick up the lights on the outside of station. We should be coming up in a period of daylight soon, and that should hopefully help them see station without the extra lights, but also...
Roger that. Inside 2 minutes, sunrise.
And you heard it, sunrise coming up in about 2 minutes. Should help both Butch and Suni see the station with their own eyes, as well as the visual spectrum cameras pick it up as well. Currently sitting just over 530 meters away from station.
Now, we do not have views currently of the crew inside the Starliner capsule. However, we will regain views of Suni and Butch once they dock to the International Space Station. We also do anticipate to start getting views from the space station itself looking down on Starliner as it continues its approach. Again, the next major milestone this morning is the IF2 burn, coming up in about 15 minutes. That places us on the docking corridor. That means we're directly in front of the docking port. And today we are targeting the Node 2 forward port, which is where one of our 2 international docking adapters is located. And as we transition from an orbital nighttime into an orbital daytime, teams reporting that they are getting all good views on the Vesta system. This is the system on Starliner that allows us to track the space station, and as we get closer, will help us align with the docking port. This view inside the white flight control room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Teams are taking the opportunity to take a very quick break before we get into the docking operations. And with good views coming in on the Vesta system, let's learn a little bit more about the eyes of Starliner.
Vesta is a brand new and highly complex navigation system designed by Boeing. It's what Starliner will use to autonomously dock with the International Space Station. VESTA stands for Vision-Based Electro-Optical Sensor Tracking Assembly, and here's how it works. The system consists of 2 laser-ranging sensors, 2 wide-field sensors, and 2 narrow-field sensors, all of which work together to guide Starliner slowly and safely to the station. Early in the rendezvous process, the sensors operate in a long-range tracking mode, monitoring the International Space Station from afar when it still resembles a bright, star-like spot in the distance. As Starliner gets closer, the sensors pick up more details and are able to see the ISS clearly enough to determine its outline. This phase is known as silhouette mode. Then, in the final phases of docking, the space station is close enough for the Vesta sensors to switch to feature track, where they use exterior features on the docking port of the Harmony module, such as handrails, stickers, and reflectors, to assess the capsule's position and attitude. Starliner's Vesta systems are programmed to recognize these features as relative points of navigation, enabling the spacecraft to determine exactly where it is and execute its docking procedures with great precision. Vesta also gives the ground teams a highly accurate understanding of Starliner's location relative to the space station, as Starliner autonomously makes its way to the orbital laboratory.
And these are views live right now from Vesta. As you can see, we are getting more and more detail from those cameras. You can even make out some of the IROSAs, or the International Space Station rollout solar arrays, atop the original arrays on the top right and the bottom left of your screen. And we have our first views of Starliner from the International Space Station, now crossing over into an orbital daytime over the South Pacific Ocean. We are tracking docking this morning at 11:15 a.m. Central Time, the first arrival of Starliner to the International Space Station with NASA astronauts aboard.
Starliner Houston on the big loop. Just letting you know, now that we have light outside, we're going to turn off the cedar lights just in case.
Thank you.
Now that we're into an orbital sunrise, teams here in Mission Control have let the Starliner crew know they are turning off the lights on the International Space Station side, since it seems like the crew aboard Starliner now has a good visual on the station itself. Again, Starliner is flying autonomously right now, but we will see the crew transition to manual piloting at about a 260-meter hold point, giving them a chance to take the reins of Starliner.
Starliner, see the B1 Bravo 1 A3 jet fail. Still taking a look at it. Yeah, and it failed off.
Airfield 2, we're up to 14 marks, 15, 16, 17.
Okay, copy.
Want us to get rejected or not?
Yeah, don't need to reject it yet. Butch, Ray's looking at it.
All right, go up to 35.
Roger.
You're looking at a live view of Starliner as it approaches the International Space Station on NASA's Boeing crew flight test with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams aboard. I'm NASA's Leah Cheshire, joined by Boeing's Jim May, and we are continuing to track the first flight of crew aboard the Starliner spacecraft. Starliner lifted off yesterday at 9:52 a.m. Central Time. Since then, the spacecraft has made several maneuvers up to the International Space Station, and it is now on the docking axis following the inbound fly around 1 burn. We're standing by for the inbound fly around 2 burn coming up in about 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, built in over the last 24 hours, the crew has had about 8 hours of a sleep period. They woke up around 3 a.m. Central Time this morning, and we are targeting docking at approximately 11:15 a.m. Central Time. We're live in the White Flight Control Room here at Johnson Space Center. This is where Starliner is being commanded. There at the top of your screen in the light blue shirt, that's Flight Director Ed Van Cise. In the middle of the screen, you can see Capcom or Capsule Communicator Neil Nagata. And down in the white shirt with the red tie, that's NASA astronaut Mike Fink, also a crew member for the Starliner 1 mission. Now, as we are here in the White Flight Control Room in Houston, we have a team member just across the hall. That's NASA's Gary Jordan. He's in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, keeping up with the other spacecraft that we are monitoring today. That's the International Space Station itself. Gary, how's it going over there?
Hey, Leah. Hey, Jim. Really good to be following this flight with you today from the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Teams here are led by Flight Director Vincent Lacourt, working hand in hand with Ed Van Cise just down the hall. The two, in synchronized fashion, are walking through the steps very methodically, like a choreographed dance. Starliner's burns have been executed precisely according to the timeline. Everything tracking well on the International Space Station side. Right next to him, you'll see Will Vu. He's the Capcom from here in Mission Control, Houston, relaying the procedures and following along with, of course, all of the different operations, but his job is to talk with the crew aboard the International Space Station. 7-member crew is currently aboard and awaiting the arrival of Butch and Suni. It's NASA astronaut Matt Dominik's job inside the International Space Station to monitor Butch and Suni's arrival. He's there in the very front, slightly to the right. NASA astronaut Matt Dominik, and of course complemented by the entire Expedition 71 crew. They're following along. The station is prepared and ready to receive the Starliner. We have the exterior lights off. The solar arrays are parked in a configuration ready for the docking, and the attitude is right on track. So we're just counting down just minutes away from the inbound fly around to burn. And with that, we will send it right back over to you, Leah and Jim, over in the White Flight Control Room to take us through this next burn.
Thanks, Gary, and that's correct. We are standing by for the inbound fly around to burn. Time of ignition expected in about 2 minutes and 35 seconds. Meanwhile, this view coming from the International Space Station, looking directly at Starliner as it moves up to the docking axis.
This IF2 burn is just a small adjustment from the IF1 burn. It will help flatten out Starliner's trajectory to get it to point more towards the approach corridor on the Node 2 forward docking port of the Harmony node.
Starliner, go for the IF2 burn.
Go for IF2.
And we're go for this IF2 burn. This burn should only be about 1 second long.
all my data flashing on the flight over trench.
And coming up on about 5 seconds to the burn. Good burner. And you saw the thrusters fire for the IF2 burn?
That burn happening right on time, 10:07 a.m. Central Time.
To burn and Butch, say again for data flashing on orb trench.
The nav clear, the white converged, and then 4.02, an inbound fly around, and then the destination A and B in the ARB region. Not all flashing at the same time. Different ones would flash at different times. It's staying now, but it was still a lot of flashing. Go away, come back. Go away, come back.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question. Yeah, and good report. Thanks, Butch. We'll have to take a look at that one. And Starliner, we're curious with that flashing on the parameters. Are you comfortable enough that you can command a destination A or B?
Yeah, now it's not doing it. I could have done it before as well. Where you actually do the commands, it was fine. Like the abort and the recover, those never flash. It's just the white text. And the reason I called you, I know it was right before the burn, because I was hoping to call your attention to it in case it was still doing it, you could see it. So my apologies.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Sorry, we just didn't copy the whole transmission right before the burn.
With completion of the IF2 burn, that's the inbound fly around 2 burn, we are now looking toward the ACI burn in 12 minutes. That's the approach corridor initiation. So at that point, the Starliner spacecraft will be about 300 meters in front of the International Space Station, directly in front of the Node 2 forward docking port where we are headed today. Once we get to the 260-meter mark, the crew will take manual control of the spacecraft and do another manual piloting demo. This time looks like we will have good visuals from the space station to see it. We've now stepped into a satellite handover. The space station uses tracking data relay satellite systems, and we periodically experience these handovers as we switch from one satellite to the next, but these are tracked and, as you can see, usually very quickly regained.
Roger.
The only issue, there's a fair amount of, I think it's RCS jet residue on the window, outside the window.
Okay. Yeah, Butch, we're assuming you're talking about the IVA hatch window for the centerline camera.
That's perfect. I mean, all of our windows have it. It's pretty much covered, but yeah, that one, it's not objectionable. I just want you to know it's there.
Okay, copy.
And Starliner continuing its slow approach as it gets near the box to start the ACI burn. Starliner is currently 451 meters away from the Node 2 forward docking port, currently approaching at about 0.22 meters per second.
Let me just check the camera battery. It says 134 minutes, three-quarter charge.
Okay, yeah, copy that. And but you should have the battery charge on the tablet overlay itself.
Okay, you mean the camera battery is on the overlay?
Yeah, should be on the tablet.
Always learn.
Roger that. Starliner Houston on the big loop for words for the jet fails that we have. We're planning on doing a hot fire test before we get into the KOS to see if we can get those jets back. And big picture, what that means is that once we get to 260 meters, you're going to go ahead and press through the procedure and put the Starliner in the station keeping inside the corridor. But we're not going to do the manual control demo. You're just going to station keep for us. I'll get you words to get us in a free drift when we're ready. We'll test fire the jets, and we'll see what the data tells us. But essentially, we're just going to be in and out of hold, and you're going to have to do some station keeping in that time frame.
Okay, so at 260 meters, you're going to want me to take manual control and station keep at 260 meters and just hold it there. And then we'll go free on your call. You'll do your jet fire, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's good words. That's good words for now. I'll get you more detailed words once we get there, and we'll have to coordinate that for you. And just be advised, we're going to want to know if you can hear or feel the jets. So we'll be in back and forth comm during that time period.
We are in another satellite handover with the tracking data relay satellite systems on the International Space Station. We've just heard some comms to the crew about the plan for 2 reaction control system thrusters they are troubleshooting. We have an upcoming ACI, that's approach a corridor initiation burn in 3 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. And after that occurs, we will reach our 260-meter hold point. We anticipate that hold point around 1024. This is originally where we were planning to switch to manual mode and go into the manual piloting demo. We are still going to switch into that manual mode and troubleshoot those 2 reaction control system thrusters on the service module by conducting a hot fire test. After that is complete, the crew will have the opportunity to conduct their manual piloting demo.
So the 2 RCS jets that are currently being investigated, they were preemptively turned off by the flight control system with some sensor values that were slightly above the conservative bounds that we have set. So that's the reason why they're going to do a test of those to see if they can bring them back into the active set of thrusters. Looking at the Vesta views on the screen, the upper right camera, or the near field viz camera, is currently in feature track mode. You can see some cyan light blue outlines around different features of the station. And that lets people looking at the images know that Vesta is correctly tracking where it thinks and knows.
Go for ACI.
Go for ACI.
Those outlines letting people on the ground know that Vesta is accurately tracking the outside of station. We also heard a call up to Commander Butch Wilmore that the crew is go for the ACI burn. And that ACI burn just started and stopped.
Starliner, good corridor burn. Go for station keeping at 260 meters.
We are coming up on that 260-meter hold point following the ACI, or approach corridor initiation burn, right on time at 10:22 a.m. Central Time. Again, we are tracking 11:15 a.m. as the earliest opportunity for docking today. However, it is a docking window, so we can hold.
Big loop, good corridor. Go for station keeping at 260 meters.
Hold at 265. Hold at 260.
Yeah, good readback.
Starliner coming up on 260 meters. Butch and Suni are going to begin the hold at 260 meters.
Starliner in this hold for your trajectory. We're looking for about a 10-minute football. Starliner getting ahead here for the hot fire. I want you guys to go ahead and pull up 12.10.218, 12.10.218, step 2 for the hot fire procedure.
Okay, 12.10.218. We had a pulled up. We're looking at step 2.
Okay, Roger.
This is a view of Starliner from the International Space Station. The spacecraft is now aligned with the International Docking Adapter on the Node 2 forward port. That's its intended destination today. They are currently holding at the 260-meter mark. This was a planned hold. However, it is being extended to troubleshoot 2 reaction system thrusters.
And Starliner, we see the B2A2 jet failed off. Still talking about it, still good for control. Hey, Butch, we need to sweeten up the trajectory a little bit. Can you give us a couple ups? And Suni, confirm you've got the procedure pulled up.
And Capcom Neil Nagata blowing a few messages up to Butch and Suni. They're currently continuing to.
Hey, Butch, for the trajectory, we want to show that we're going to be above the docking axis for 10 minutes.
Do that.
Crew's going to continue their hold outside of the approach corridor. Mission and ground controllers continuing to analyze the data coming in from the RCS jets.
Hey, Suni, are you guys ready to execute the SM hot fire test procedure? We lost another jet, S1A1.
We're ready to execute the procedure. I'm with you on step 2 of 12.10.218.
Okay, you guys are go to execute step 2, and in between the hot fires, please damp rates. Stand by.
The crew aboard Starliner is preparing to conduct a hot fire test of the thrusters that are currently down. Teams here in the room are continuing to work those procedures. Again, we are at a 260-meter hold point.
Starliner, execute step 2 now, please.
Starliner, we see step 2 complete.
Roger. Okay, Starliner, we're about to hot fire S2A2. Stand by.